now?
It's on.
There we go. That was a fantastic lunch, and so thanks to the folks here at the school. We have a real treat for our keynote speaker. My good friend Pat Kemp is here. She's chairman of the Commission for the Environmental Protection Commission right now, and she's on the Hillsborough County Commission. The county commissioners also serve as the Commission for the Environmental Protection Commission. Pat was elected to the Hillsborough County Commission in 2016, representing countywide District 6. Commissioner Kemp has had more than 3 decades of public service in Hillsborough County. She was chief aide to Congresswoman Kathy Castor when Kathy served on the Hillsborough County Commission. She also served as an aide to State Representative Sarah Romeo. An attorney, she worked both in private practice and was a Bay Area legal services, providing civil legal services for low-income clients. As a journalist, she served as a news director and a radio talk show host at WUSF and WMNF. Over the years, Commissioner Kemp has volunteered for many community projects and organizations. She co-founded the Old Seminole Heights Neighborhood Association, served in leadership roles at the Sierra Club of Tampa Bay, and on the board of Tampa Crossroads, a nonprofit that provides counseling, treatment, housing, and other services to veterans, disabled, and others. And as I said earlier, very importantly, she is presently the chairman of the Environmental Protection Commission of Hillsborough County and has been a tireless advocate for alternative energy sources, including solar energy. And she's been an advocate for this program, the co-op program with Solar United Neighbors. And we thank you so much for your leadership in that. Pat, we look forward to your comments.
Thank you all, and thank you all for what you do, because I know this is a very special group, and I'm really honored to be here to talk to you on the 3rd Solar Congress, and welcome to Tampa, Hillsborough County. I'm a Hillsborough County Commissioner, countywide, and I'm trying to move ahead the agenda, and it's only happening because of you all and people like all of us across the planet, I think, that are moving this ahead. We started a solar fair here. Before I was ever a commissioner, I even thought about doing it a little bit later in life, but I've always been a community activist. We started a solar fair here, and I remember speaking at one of the first solar fairs. I think it was like in 2014 or so. And I started out my speech by thank you, Germany, because at the time, Germany was the leader of the world in solar energy, and they had the solar power, the cloud cover of the state of Montana. So we knew that we had a lot more potential and that things could change and that things had to change, right? I sometimes default to, and I hear it all the time, that we have to save the planet, which, as we know, isn't actually accurate. I think the planet will survive all the terrible things that we have placed upon it, the burdens that we've given it, but I worry that the human race and the species across the planet will not sustain unless we do something, do it quick, do it as fast as we can. We know part of this is baked in, but part of it is for us to change. And I'm getting a little older now, and thinking about how we leave the planet. I know for a lot of years I didn't know, as many people didn't know, kind of what we were doing to the planet, but I feel it's my obligation to bring it back as much as I can, to leave it for the future to make those changes. I'm very proud of the things that we've been able to do in Hillsborough County, and I'll start out, actually, Rick mentioned Tampa Crossroads, where I was on the board of directors. It's a not-for-profit dealing with veterans, homeless, and has programs for people in lieu of prison or jail to rehabilitation programs. And one of the things we did back in 2020, I think it was like 2009 or 10, is we built a Platinum LEED affordable housing 24-unit apartment building, one of the first in the Southeast for people that were homeless, with a priority for women veterans. So Tampa Crossroads is leading the way in that. A few months ago, I don't know how many of you know about this, but there's 4 big energy companies, large energy companies in Florida, and then 25%, probably a lot of you already know this, are municipals that have varying policies. Of the 4 big ones, TECO is one of those. TECO mostly covers Hillsborough County, a little bit of a few other counties, but that is our primary provider. The other 3 companies that cover the state, the large ones anyway, cover much bigger, have much bigger footprints: Gulf, Florida Power and Light, and the Gulf, or Duke, Gulf Power and Duke. But TECO recently, they've been hugely coal invested, doing a lot of coal, and so they were talking about going to gas, and they have their plants right down on the water, down here in South County at Apollo Beach, in a really precarious place. So they were talking about switching those plants from coal to gas, which, you know, a few years ago might have been something that would have, they could argue would be more feasible. We heard all about bridge gases or gas bridging the way to solar and renewable. But thank goodness, we've seen huge jumps, and I cheered them on from 2016 when I first became a commissioner to the present. I think in 2017 they opened their first solar array, which was, and I'm trying to think now, I think it was 100 acres of solar panels, 23 megawatts, that's what it was. I haven't had to say it in a long time because it keeps growing much bigger. But they are now looking at doing about 10% of their footprint with solar panel or renewable energy, which at first was a really good thing, and you know, I've been following it along. But then the next thing this year, they had announced that they were looking at making their their coal plants. They were going to transition them to gas plants instead of looking now to make that investment in solar and move to the future and look at all the ways that we can make this a renewable community. We are certainly on the front lines of a sea level rise and have to do that. At the time, and this letter is dated July 24th, 2019. 3 of the 7 commissioners signed it. We might have been able to get 4. There wasn't quite the time, but if we will not be stopping yet. But 3 of our county commissioners signed it, including me, to the cabinet, who is going to make a decision on whether they would allow them to move it from a coal to a gas plant. And here's the letter. Don't approve TECO's Big Bend gas plant. We're asking you to reject TECO's plans to build a new gas power plant in Tampa Bay, Florida. On Tampa Bay. Florida should no longer be importing $58 billion a year in fossil fuels that poison our water, degrade our air, and place the state of Florida, especially Tampa Bay, at severe risk of sea level rise and acidification of our oceans and waterways. Now's the time for Florida to embrace our energy future and use our own abundant and clean energy resource, the sun. This is not an unrealistic expectation. In fact, in less than, actually it turns out to be 12 miles over the border of Hillsborough County from the Big Bend site, 30 miles, Florida Power and Light is building the world's largest solar-powered battery system, 4 times larger than any existing plant in the world. The planned FP&L Manatee Energy Storage Center will be capable of providing 900 megawatts of electricity and powering the equivalent of 329,000 homes for 2 hours, saving FP&L customers a projected $100 million. But FP&L will almost certainly lose that claim as the largest plant for renewable energy, plants paired with battery, because these plants are poised to expand at a rapid rate throughout the world. Already, General Electric is demolishing a large power plant in California just after 1/3 of its useful life because the plant is no longer economically viable in a state where renewable wind and solar paired with battery is making for far lower energy costs. Regulators in Indiana and Arizona have rejected plans to build any new gas plants. And FP&L has committed to closing its coal and gas plants and investing in a renewable future. And already the solar energy industry has brought 10,500, thank you all, good jobs, solar jobs with good wages to the state of Florida. I just looked it up. Guess where we pair on solar jobs among the states? Second, great, yes. And who's first? California. They're first by a whole big amount. I copied it in there. I think we have our 10,000 jobs and they have about 70,000? Okay, so we have a way to go because we're going to beat them. But thanks for all, that's great. CBS News recently reported that at least a dozen states could move to 100% renewable energy for electricity in the next 2 decades, including California, Washington, Massachusetts, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Illinois, Colorado, Maine, New Mexico, New York, Michigan, and Minnesota. Major industrial European nations, including Germany and the continent of Australia, have a 100% renewable energy goal by 2050. And I know I traveled a couple years ago to Costa Rica. I guess they're 100% renewable now with a lot of hydro and I saw a lot of wind turbines and solar panels in Costa Rica. It's time for Florida to commit to a clean energy future and create our own good-paying jobs, energy jobs, while saving taxpayer and ratepayer dollars and mitigating sea level rise. Florida's lagging behind other states and the rest of the world in embracing the benefits and savings renewable energy sources provide. Please lead the way for Florida to embrace a renewable clean energy future. And that was signed by myself and Hillsborough County Commissioners Mariella Smith and Kimberly Overman. We've also recently learned, and I was really pleased, I keep good contact with Congresswoman Kathy Castor, head of the Climate Change Committee in Washington, and I was her aide at the County Commission some years ago. So she has also is opposed to TECO doing this plant. I should say it went to the Cabinet, and the Cabinet, I'm sure this will surprise you, but they approved it 3-1. And Nikki Fried was the one vote against it. But I do not consider it fait accompli, although technically it is, because I think this just, we're throwing down the gauntlet now, and we're going to make sure that TECO begins to have a renewable future. There's no reason that we can't move in that direction now, and there's no way that we should build a dangerous gas plant practically in the water. I think they have to raise it like 20 feet and do another 10 feet of a wall or 15 feet of a wall around it. It's a precarious place from a long time ago, and that cannot be our future here in Tampa Bay. But that we also have in St. Petersburg, Mayor Rick Kreisman sometime committed to 100% renewable future by 2050 for St. Petersburg. Our own mayor here in Tampa, Jane Castor, has said that she's interested in doing the same here. And I think we should, I'm looking forward to a county commission here for Hillsborough County. We have a population larger than 10 states, we're getting close to 1.5 million people now in Hillsborough County committing to 100% renewable future. I hope that we can do that expeditiously. And we're moving in many, many ways towards that future, I feel. One of the ways that I'm really proud of is that we have welcomed in, thank you, Dr. Garrity, and thank you, Julia, the Solar United Neighbors. We've introduced the co-op here through the County Commission and our EPC, Michelle Jenkins, and made it possible for Hillsborough to have solar co-ops, or at least partially funded those. But that have been a great thing for our community because we could do the group purchasing or they could do the group purchasing as a co-op, and the education and everything else that brings. I'm very proud to say that in the entire country and in the state of Florida, where many of these kind of solar co-op kickoffs have gone off, I don't know if it's still true, but it was true when we did the first one. We had the #1 biggest solar kickoff in the country, which just shows you that. shows you the pent up, I think, energy. And I had read in one of the journals a couple years ago that we also finally, Florida ranked first in the country, at least for 1 quarter, for rooftop solar installation, which I think again speaks to the pent up desire to move to this. I think people are ahead of many times our public policymakers. And they're ahead too with their investments, and they realize that this is a wise way to move both economically and in terms of in the energy, what we do in our planet and our greenhouse gases. The other program I'm very proud of, and I don't know that they're present today, but I don't know how many of you have heard of the solar energy and solar energy, they changed their solar energy and loan fund program. Let's see, I have it written here. So they changed their name on me, and I've gotten it wrong several times. I can't believe I didn't put it. The SELF program. I'll say that. Solar Energy Loan Fund. How many have heard of that? Thank you. It's we brought that into Hillsborough County. I went over to St. Lucie before I became a commissioner back in 2013, and went and met Doug Howard, a former county commissioner over in St. Lucie County. They have an amazing program. We brought it to Hillsborough County. It's also in St. Petersburg. And we have a full-time person here from the SELF program. And they really have a great mission they're a not-for-profit, and they help reduce operating costs, increase quality of life, and stimulate the local economy by helping people that may have, I just saw on their website, you can go there, the Solar Energy Loan Fund, that's why I'm trying to get it right here, but they had a great story on the piece, a woman who had a $600 energy bill, I should play it for you, but a month, and they came in and they helped her to get a loan to reduce her energy costs by putting insulation in her attic and a low SEER air conditioner, and her bill was reduced tremendously, and she was suffering a lot. She had very limited resources. I couldn't believe she had a $600 a month energy bill because her house looked like it would nowhere near be that cost in electricity, and really changed her life. And it's a dramatic piece, but it happens all the time where they do all kinds of energy efficiency movements, because we know that that's part of what you can do to save your consumption. And also in cases install solar panels, which was kind of their first thing that they thought they were going to be doing, and they ended up doing, as you all probably know, a lot more energy efficiency. So we have those two programs now operating in Hillsborough County, and I feel very proud of having brought them into the county to change the future of Hillsborough County and the residents here. We also have started, since I came, I asked the county, we needed to hire a sustainability director, which we did in first year, and have really moved it to kind of the next level. We also hired actually, which I thought was a sustainable practice, a pedestrian trail person, which we hadn't had for a long time, that surrounding counties had had, because transit and walkability and the way we build our communities is also part of building a more sustainable future. We have our sustainability director. We started having monthly, I asked to be part of the monthly staff sustainability meetings, and I feel like we're moving far ahead. The first year, the county administrator in the budget, I had them dedicate $4 million for the purchase of solar panels in Hillsborough County. And we started looking at everything we could in the county so that we could panel it and do whatever energy efficiencies we could do. The next year we did $5 million this past year. And we're moving in the direction with that. I've also looked at our fleet or asked about our fleet and going all electric and how we can move into that. And I talked to the sheriff about putting panels on our jail, because I read about a jail in Gainesville several years ago that got a green award for panels on their jail. And while we haven't quite gotten there with that yet, the sheriff went out and looked, and he's now buying the first 25 hybrid police cruisers. So And I'm really pleased about that and like to see us move in that direction. We also had I'm on the HART board, which is our regional transit agency. We had no electric buses, and I was really, we had moved into CNG, and there was some commitment there, I think. But I was really interested in pursuing electric buses, and there's only actually, there was only 2 companies in the U.S. Proterra out of South Carolina, started their own electric bus. It was started by an engineer. I've talked to him. He was really interested in designing and putting forward an electric bus. They're the primary, they do the primary sales, I think, in most of the country. And then BYD, which was a Chinese company. Have you heard about electric buses in China? Yeah, it's incredible what they're doing. And you can imagine how when they make an edict and how the sales go there. So, but BYD came to California. It's a Chinese company, but in order to sell to our transit agencies, you have to also American sales, and so they now have a subsidiary that is American, and so those are the 2. And now there's 2 more bus companies that have done conversions or partial conversions to electric buses. At our HART board, I put it on the agenda for 2 years now for us to start to purchase electric buses. There was not that commitment from a majority of the board, which is what you obviously need to move forward, but we have now have that commitment, and we have, and hopefully it will happen. We have kind of an issue with a sales tax here that the voters voted on 57%, which would fund 45% for transit, and that's unfortunately been held up in the courts. Someone sued, so when that money is released, I think there's a huge commitment on the board to go 100% electric buses, but we now have on hold our first order for 10 electric buses, which I would like to see us start moving towards electric buses, and that would be a great thing. The state now, I think there's places, Broward, Miami-Dade, to have like 70 or 80 electric buses now. Tallahassee was the first leader with 2 electric buses back in 2008, 2009. I think they now have 10 or 20. St. Pete just bought a few electric buses for PSTA in Pinellas, and Gainesville has electric. So it's primarily moving both in the state of Florida and all over the country. We might be one of the last transit agencies, or major transit agencies in Florida at least, without electric buses. So I'm anxious to move in that direction. I've also been pushing, because obviously one of our biggest needs are in the area of transit for our greenhouse gases, for our ferries, to have commuter rail, to have our electric buses, and to move in a direction that makes our transit, because transit is one of the biggest needs that we have in terms of energy savings. And of course, when we do electric transit, we can power it all with renewable energy, with solar and batteries, and I'm very excited about that. I'll just show you a couple. I just pulled a few things. I always say when I come to do one of these speeches, I have to do my research again and go back, because this week things change dramatically, and next week things change dramatically, so I'm not accountable for my facts. Usually things get better, and it's always a great thing to see how, it's always inspiring to me to see how much change we're having and how much change we're making. This was one of the, I was looking through, it's not solar, but it beats coal. State should back TECO natural gas. That's from the Tampa Bay Times. I think they were mistaken, but they start off by the first line on that editorial, and where is it? Maybe it got cut off here, but I know the first line they called those of us. They didn't quite yet know that we were coming out in such strength, but they called us environmental whiners. And we're going to make them take that back. But this is just from a few days ago. Tampa Bay's CO2 emissions are up by more than half in 30 years. The New York Times recently did an article. We have had terrible problems with that, and they're growing. We're the problem, and we're going to have to change that. I'm very proud about the kinds of changes we've made. I'm just trying to see my little list here, but we're going to have to be, I think our big need is to move away from the single occupancy vehicle, move to the electric vehicles and have them be solar and battery powered. So I'm looking forward to working with you all to build a better future here in Hillsborough County, and thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Kemp. Here's a little goodie bag. Thank you so much for your continued support for Solar United Neighbors as well. Thank you. In this room, next up is, let's see, we will have Community Solar 101. So stay seated or grab a quick drop of water. And then I believe it's right across the hall, Hillsborough room, is Financing Solar. Check out your agenda, the speakers, and what you're